Welcome to the USAID Climate MEL Learning Series. Today we're going to be talking to you about geospatial reporting for EG 13.8. Next slide, please. I am Larissa Warhol. I am part of the REFS Bureau in the Center for Natural Environment, part of the Natural Climate Solutions Division. And my co-presenter today is Lindsay Barbieri from the GeoCenter. Bar, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hello. I'm Lindsay Barbieri with the GeoCenter.
So our agenda for today is I will take you through natural climate solutions and the USAID climate strategy. We'll talk briefly specifically about what is EG 13.8, and then I'll hand it over to Bar and she'll talk to you about the geospatial reporting requirements. Next slide, please. So when we talk about natural climate solutions, what we're really talking about is climate change mitigation. And mitigation is reducing the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we either do this two ways. You can either do this by reducing the production of these gases or by enhancing the quote unquote sinks that sequester or accumulate and store these gases. So if we think about reducing the production, we can either reduce the burning of fossil fuels, or we can reduce deforestation, change land use change. And in terms of creating sinks or sequestering, again, preserving forests, restoring soils, making sure our oceans are healthy. These are all really important natural sinks that help reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about climate change mitigation, specifically today, we're talking about natural climate solutions. Now, a lot of people often ask, what are natural climate solutions? And we think of natural climate solutions as solutions to conserve, restore, sustainably manage forests and lands. These solutions are super critical. On the one hand, they help remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, but on the other hand, they're often responsible for actually adding greenhouse gas emissions to the atmosphere. And we're really seeing this through land change, from increasing agriculture, from deforestation, and this is especially true in a lot of the countries that USAID works in. Next slide, please. And so how do we, in fact, implement NCS at USAID? We have what we call 3 different pathways. And so we conserve, so we're preventing the loss of native ecosystems. And we do focus a lot on tropical forests, but this can extend, to mangroves, peatlands, all different kinds of ecosystems, rangelands. We then manage, so we improve production systems like farms, ranches, and working forests. And then we also restore. So we're bringing back native ecosystems from areas where they were lost or often degraded. Next slide, please. And so when USAID has criteria for their sustainable landscapes programming, and again, it has to have an explicit climate change mitigation objective to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It should be based on analysis and evidence. It should seek to achieve mitigation impact at scale. And then it should monitor, report, and manage adaptively. Next slide, please. These are our 8 standard indicators for EG 13 sustainable landscape. Today, we're going to only be talking about EG 13.8. It is one of our newer indicators, and so people are getting used to reporting on it. Other indicators we're talking about in another session of the MEL Learning Series. So if you're interested in the other 7, I recommend you also watching that session. But today, we're going to be focusing just specifically on EG 13.8. Next slide, please. Partially why EG 13.8 is so important is because of the USAID climate strategy. This is a strategy that was enacted in 2022 that really is encouraging a whole of agency approach to address climate change and specifically climate change mitigation. And so we're really looking to enable ambitious approaches, target really high priority communities, and really pursuing equitable mitigation to advance a just transition that has economic and social benefits. Next slide, please. NCS program, so these are the 6 climate strategy targets. They include mitigation, finance, adaptation, country support, land use, and critical populations. In terms of the NCS division, we are really focused on the ones that are highlighted in red. And in particular, the big one highlighted in red is land use in terms of the 100 million hectares that's conserved, restored, or managed. And so in fact, EG 13.8 is the pretty much the sole source of data that we're using to meet this climate strategy target. And so that's why we're talking about it specifically today too, because not only is it an important indicator for the NCS division, it is one of the key indicators for our climate strategy. Next slide, please. So what is EG 13.8? It is the number of hectares under improved management expected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as a result of USG assistance. It should be the current hectares during the current year, the current reporting year. One of the key things I want to highlight that we have in a different color is this term expected. And so the intention is that, at some point there should be something happening within these hectares that does reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Hopefully that might be happening concurrently, in which case you could be reporting on, EG 13.6, which is our estimated greenhouse gas reductions for that reporting year, or potentially you could be reporting on EG 13.7, which is the projected greenhouse gas emission reduction. If you're not actually having any greenhouse gas emission reductions during the current reporting year, you can still be reporting on 13.8. So it is just a really important indicator in the sense that you should be engaged in work that should have some sort of conservation management or restoration aspect. Another thing to note is that if a project happens to overlap with biodiversity, biodiversity has its own hectares indicator, and that's EG 10.2.2. And you can be reporting the same hectares for 10.2.2 as long as it's applicable to 13.8. It's not considered double counting. It's two different funding streams. And so if it's applicable to both EG 10.2.2 and 13.8, please report to both. Disaggregates, we again are looking at those different pathways I talked about, but then we're also looking at forest versus non-forests. And then finally, one of the big requirements of this indicator is that it must include a GIS shapefile. This is where we're seeing a lot of challenges with implementing partners around what kind of GIS shapefile should they be submitting. And so this is where I'm going to turn it over to Bar with the GeoCenter, and she can talk to you more about assistance that the GeoCenter can provide and why this is such an essential aspect to this indicator.
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you, Larissa. And again, I'm Lindsay Barbieri from the GeoCenter. I go by Bar. I'm here to convey why geospatial information, particularly attached to this indicator, is mandatory. As Larissa just said, we need to include a shapefile with this indicator, but also that it's useful and I think really exciting. We know that it's mandatory to ensure transparency and accountability in our reporting. So it's mandatory to have that shapefile attached to this indicator. It's useful, of course, to think about and to know where we are working spatially and tracking over time. As Larissa just really well summarized before, when we talk about our natural climate solutions, where we're working spatially, what forests we're working in to conserve, what areas and lands are we managing and tracking over time is really useful to know. And then also it's exciting. It's exciting to see this information visually and also to overlay that with other data and other information so that we can get a more holistic picture of our lands and how our climate solutions or natural climate solutions programming might be overlapping with other types of activities that we're doing here at USAID, or other sort of thematic data might be able to help give us a better picture of our programming. So it can be really exciting to see this all spatially and overlay it with other data as well. So next slide. I'm here again from the GeoCenter. The GeoCenter is an amazing team of geospatial analysts and geographers here at USAID. And it's not just us, of course. We have a really amazing geospatial community within USAID that includes over 46 mission GIS specialists from 37 partner countries. So these are in-country specialists that are working with our missions and our partner countries overseas in terms of being able to provide geospatial expertise and analysis. And beyond our GeoCenter team based here in DC, our mission specialists based overseas, we also have an even broader community of practice with over 200 members around the agency that are all really enthusiastic users and champions of geospatial information. And we, as a whole community, are really excited to bring our expertise and our enthusiasm to help any and all work at USAID that involves geospatial information. So we're here to help you. So next slide. So when we talk about geospatial information and geographic data, what do we mean? So at USAID, we really have three types of geographic data that we think about. The first type is thematic data. This is data that might be created that's sort of thematic or contextual data that's geospatial. So for example, if we're talking about conserving forests, it might be really important first to know where forests are, where trees are, where deforestation is already happening, these sorts of contextual pieces of information. And so for thematic data sets, we here at USAID, often we don't actually create these thematic data sets ourselves, but we use other thematic data sets that are out there that are produced by partners, for example, from the World Resources Institute, from other US agencies like NASA, NOAA, USGS. These are some of the main places that we get our thematic data from. And so, for example, here we have the percent forest cover with forest loss over a certain period of time, 2000 to 2022. And this is just one example of a potentially useful thematic data set that might help us think about, our natural climate solutions programming. The second type of geographic data that we work with is our activity location data. So these are actually specific to USAID. So these are data that are specific to our activities here. So where are activities happening around the world? And this is an example data set of the number of economic development programs within a country and specific locations of a certain activity. So where a certain activity might be placed in a country. It's important for us to kind of keep track of these data within USAID. And I will say that the GeoCenter, we provide a lot of support for missions and partners in terms of helping to track activity location data and make sure that we're really meeting all of the policy requirements set out by USAID. So USAID does have policy requirements that require the collection of activity location information. Yeah, so we do a lot of support for this. Now, the third type of geographic data and most relevant to our indicator, e.g. 13.8 that we're talking about today, is our indicator data by geography. So this is our third type of data in which we can actually look at our indicator data by geography. And so we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into e.g. 13.8, or hectares of sustainable landscape. Diving deeper into our specific indicator, e.g. 13.8, what's important here is that we're requiring and recommending of this indicator that the geospatial information is coming through at the most precise level of precision. Now, that being said, in our reporting of this indicator, we've seen a wide range or a spectrum of the level of precision of how this indicator is being reported. So the most precise level, again, is that sort of exact site, so such as a forest plot or a restoration site. And this level of effort is really high and requires, a pretty familiar use of GIS. However, we've seen the spectrum of how this indicator is being reported through sort of less precise levels of precision, such as polygons that maybe encompass some of these sites of where these sustainable landscapes activities are occurring, or maybe even broader at an existing protected area or a concession area, and even broader to a lower level of precision at for example, the administrative unit, like a province, and then at the sort of level 0, we're calling it our least precise, is if no shapefile exists for these activities, then we might just be reporting at the country level, so at the national level. So if we go to the next slide, we'll actually see an example of what this could look like. So again, at that sort of lowest level of precision, that level 0, we might have an entire country sort of as our shapefile. So you can see the orange there is just capturing, the broadest level. We know that the activities are happening somewhere in this country, but we're just reporting it at the country level. And then our next sort of more precise might be, again, at that administrative unit. So for example, at a province level. So we might have a province level defined, and we know that in reality, the activities that we're reporting on this indicator are happening within the province somewhere. But if the reporting is just coming through at that province level or that sort of admin 1 level, we, have not as much precision in terms of knowing where that's happening, but at least it's a little bit more precise than our country level. And then if we go a little bit more precise even, this is our level 2 that is happening at an existing defined feature. So for example, this is an example of, that sort of orange bounding area is maybe a protected area or a concession area or, a national park or something such as that. And we know that the activity might be happening within that region. But again, the sort of level 2 data is just capturing that broader area of like, we know it's happening within this park or this protected area, but we're not getting that most precise level. If we go one step further, so our next level, level 3, is our sort of medium level of precision. And this can encompass sort of 2 different pathways. One might be a polygon that encompasses the exact sites or sort of buffers around their center points. Or we might be actually receiving information in terms of a GPS coordinate. So for example, an exact latitude and longitude point. And then that coordinate might be associated with a certain number of hectares. So we know, for example, at with a lat long point, we get a coordinate point. And then if we know that a certain number of hectares are associated with an activity that's happening at that centroid, we are able to draw sort of a centroid around that coordinate and assume that we're capturing a decent amount of the appropriate hectares within that sort of polygon that's drawn around that centroid. So this is our level 3. And if we go one more step, we're at our most precise. So our most precise level is, of course, that exact site, such as the forest plots or the restoration sites that are being counted, that are our EG 13.8 indicator of hectares of sustainable landscape. So in this case, these are the exact hectares, or an example of the exact hectares that would be counted in this indicator and are being reported on. So next slide. Okay, so this is our map of a number of hectares under improved management expected to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So this is our EG 13.8 map reported on for FY 2022. And this is an outward-facing map, so it's just a summary of the number of hectares that were reported on for each of the countries that we're reporting in FY 22. And this is just to demonstrate, once we have all of this really robust geospatial information that is reported on, we're able to kind of summarize it and show an overview of the number of hectares that are being reported on. So if we go to the next slide. And sort of even more broadly from the geospatial perspective and from the GeoCenter, we're able to provide a lot of geospatial support across a broad range of climate action for the agency. So when we think about the climate strategy that Larissa sort of situated us with, we can think about targets from a range of mitigation, finance, adaptation, country support, land use, and critical populations. And all of these are places where we have been able to provide support, geospatial support from the GeoCenter. So if we look at, for example, at mitigation, we might look at tracking the location of methane emissions, for example, as one area of interest, one way that geospatial information might help us think about how we might be able to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions better. So this is an example of an open source data set from Climate Trace that is showing the locations and the emissions amounts of methane emissions from solid waste sites. This, for example, is from solid waste sites in South Africa. But with this information, we might be able to help sort of target some of these areas that might be really important for prioritizing in terms of helping to reduce the methane emissions that are coming from specific solid waste sites. As another example, if we go on to the adaptation side, we, for example, have helped with mapping heat over time. And this we did actually with our partners at FuseNet from BHA. And this was looking at just contextual information about showing how heat, and particularly how the maximum temperature anomalies have shifted and increased over time. This is showing periods over the last 35 years for different regions around the world where we work, and showing that exactly how the temperature anomalies have increased and how heat has increased over time. And this is a good sort of contextual piece of information. And this also allows us to dive a little deeper. So for our next example, we were able to look specifically at a country. This was actually done by one of our GIS specialists in the India mission, who was able to take heat wave data, historical over time from 1969 all the way up to 2019, and was able to map where these intensive heat waves are occurring and how many of them are occurring over this time period, in order to help understand better where to put some adaptation programming in terms of helping cities with heat exposure. So for our next example, for land use support, we talked about this, but we've been supporting the Natural Climate Solutions team here, particularly with the indicator reporting on the EG 13.8, so the number of hectares under improved management. But we do a lot of support within the land use sector, and so really happy to talk about providing more examples.
Thank you all for sticking with us. This is our resources. So, again, we're happy to answer any questions if you want to directly reach out to either myself or Bar. And then there's also just the general GeoCenter email. But, these are different links to additional resources that, might help you with your reporting or to answer some questions. We just released our Global Climate Change Standard Indicator Extended Handbook, which really provides a lot of really good details and support some of the things we've been talking with you about today. And that's all available on Climate Links. So again, thank you very much. And please reach out if you have any questions.